I see that there are some other participants. I'm very glad to see that the participants are particularly interested in the topic increasing violence against employees. My name is Dolores Bucart. I am head of the Center for Crime Prevention and Security at the city of Cologne. And I'm very glad to lead you through this topic because we see an increase of violence against employees. I think this is a very important development. Well, just coming now to the next slide. Thank you very much. So maybe I should start maybe then with something very important, something that we have already heard of. You maybe have seen it in Cologne that actually then there were some important events, something that has been well known over the world, even in the New York Times. So you see that during the carnival operations in Cologne, so there were particularly disputes and also that with the public order department and also with the police. So it just happened like that. This was actually a mob of young people that were hundreds altogether, and so they were very strong, and so they were disputing and had a riot, and so that caused a lot of violence against the police and the public order. This is something very important right now. So we had some staff members that were injured severely, so severely, and so we also read also just an example, something that was particularly well known all over the world, and there are this kind of assaults, unfortunately, against the police and the public departments. So people have the feeling that this is going to be widespread all over the world, and this kind of development is increasing. So is violence actually increasing? It's something that is difficult to answer because actually we see numerous individual studies and surveys that actually are in favor for this increase, speak for this increase. We have figures and numbers, and so then actually do not have actually no central registration of such assaults, and there's no standardized procedure for that. And so in Cologne, so we thought that it was probably possible, to understand if there's a real development of an increased violence, and what are actually these cases, and what are the things that we need to do. And that's the reason why we started to carry out a study and register the cases. So there are actually some studies about that. So we have, for example, the study Beam has a 2020, and so they understood that there are not only hostilities and also on the police and force departments, but actually it goes beyond for law enforcement, emergency services, reaching very many other fields of activity in the public service. So we see here there are insults, there are also then assaults, and there are injuries. And so this is one important. We're going to talk about that. And this is actually the experience we have in Cologne too. Only a very small proportion the total is recorded internally by authorities. And so we're trying to record and register all these cases, but it's not easy because, of course, we have data protection for the people, and this is something that causes difficulties in that. And then only a very, very small proportion is then reported to the police. And this is also something very interesting. There was a study that has been developed in different towns and cities, and so we have seen that people affected, so victims, would like to see the judiciary take much more consistent action against this kind of violence. And so we have seen the experience, we have had the experience that, such cases are reported to the police, but then everything is then suspended and is going to be then abandoned. It is not then followed the right way by the judiciary. This is a very important topic. And another important thing, so this affected people would very often like to see better preparation and more support from the employer. But this is, of course, something interesting, something difficult, and this is something we need to improve. And, of course, these victims, these affected people would like also to have better protection under this criminal law. This is something that we could see. This is something that we see very often because this employees very often need to be witnesses of such cases, and very often they do not have any protection in terms of a criminal law, and that's the reason why, so that people feel really non-protected, and so that's why we would like to have a better protection. That's why we have this answer in this study. This was the study DBB has. And then if we see another study, the DGB 2020, again, the same year, so we see that 67% of employees in the public and private sectors have been insulted, threatened, or assaulted during their work in the past 2 years. This is, of course, a figure that this is showing that all people that are working, sometimes are victims of such cases. Maybe then this number could be even higher if they all could report it. And we see 57% say violence has increased in the past 10 years. This is the first declaration, let's say. Yeah, I believe that this is, of course, a very important indicator, but that is, of course, not just proven. So it's not proven. This is a declaration, but it's not proven yet. But let's say now the next study. This is a study on assaults against employees in municipal administrations. So this was in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia on behalf of the COMPA. And we see that out of 187 forms of threats and conflicts, we have 50 threats, 5 violent assaults with or without a weapon. So if we look at these cases, so assaults of violence, so with or without a weapon, so we see that then there are not many cases, just 5 of them, but maybe then we see sometimes some other figures that show us a devastation. Then 46% of public sector employees are assaulted several times, so assaulted several times. This is quite a very high number, so almost half of people, so people that had bad experience, so they were assaulted several times, and so this is something that speaks for itself. Now I come down, of course, to a very sad case because on the 13th December 2019, our colleague Brown was stabbed to death. And so he was, a colleague in the public sector, and then he was in a very sad situation. He was together with a female colleague, and so she also saw everything. And this person was stabbed to death, and then the city of Cologne was particularly suffering about that. We know there are assaults in the city. We know people that have been assaulted and have been victims of violence. But once you see directly, then one of your colleagues is, of course, then stabbed to death. And so, of course, you see that a person is not there from one day to the other one. This is, of course, a terrible situation, a terrible feeling. We reflected upon what happened, so we could understand how we could protect our employees, but then we understood actually we have to do something absolutely in order to protect our employees, and the context was in that case actually a very tragic case. So this was somebody working for the social office, and we see that the same criminals was assaulting also an employee from the social office, and actually we do not know anything about that, and nobody about that. Of course, there are so many thousands of employees, and so this case was not registered. Nobody knew about that, and nobody could refer to this case, this criminal. This is, of course, something very dangerous, is something we have to reflect upon, something we need to take into consideration. And that's the reason why then we have then prepared a kind of a program. This is the so-called the digital support concept and program. So we see that then, we see that then digital means then of emails and messages, and so we see that then we have understood, we have agreed on the fact that we need to have a central reporting center, a central reporting information system for employee hazards. This is something very important, something that we needed to report in these cases. And so this going to be leading to measures, so that we need to have also then personal development measures. So we need also to have also protection measures, and of course, so we need to have also a particular advice for this employees, which means that we do not only register such cases and data, but at the same time we need, of course, to also act within this ZeMAG system, the Central Report Information System, where we say we need to do something in order to protect people, employees. The same thing, when people, when these criminals cannot get closer, of course, this must be registered as well. And very important is also this very important follow-up measures. So follow-up measures, we need to have the psychological support, self-development, counseling as workflow, and that's the reason why we need to act. And I believe we cannot be blocked by data protection, and then of course then we have assaults on employees working in different municipality offices, and of course we needed to support the system, and we need to help all this kind of systems. And now let's go over to the next slide. Let's talk about the central report information system for hazards to municipal employees. So we have seen that the system is quite good, and a way with some now we are reflecting how we can also improve everything, so based on different data that we have collected. Well, essentially, so everybody can report a case, so it can be not only a victim, can be also then other people as well. So we can all report it to the system, so all the people that are there. And so then we see that then the people in charge are going to see what has been reported, and then there's of course then a parallel release. So we in the Center for Crime Prevention and Security, of course, gets this reported, and so at the same time, so parallel, we can get it. I can check upon that, and so then we have the personnel. And the staff officer can also take care of this information, and then it's going to identify the case. This is, of course, an absolutely very important prerequisite in order to carry out measures according to the reporting within the city of Cologne. And we believe that we need to have this kind of procedure. And so when we see it in the reporting, we see this red area, that's us, basically. So that there will be following, of course, the articles of the city rules, and of course, so we are going directed to address this people because their data are going to be registered and according to the criminal law. And normally, so there are, of course, we have also then people that actually so were not included in this case, but of course we have to identify them. And so then we have this system where we see then the queries. So we just give you an example. So, for example, the legal office that does not have contacts outside in the external world. So then, of course, would also ask a query, and this is something that they also can do. So I think that we have 4,000 then cases, so it's a quite a high number. And I think that in this case, we could also see all the different data that are very important for such a reporting system. At the same time, you see on the right side, so you see then all different help offers. So we see, for example, for the staff, so the personnel office, and of course then the worker protection, so on all the different measures in order to help such people. All right, okay, let's go over now to the next slide. So I'm not going to give you all the details about this slide, but of course, then this illustration threshold according to the risk situation based on the Aachen model. So this data, according to this data, so we decided that we needed to set a registration threshold. So could be maybe then different kinds of things can be, of course, then different kinds of damage to property, physical violence, threats, sexual harassment are going to, of course, to be registered, but then also a bomb threat, amok run, hostage taken, robbery, use of weapons. Of course, with this threshold, we need, of course, to do something, because otherwise, then if you're losing your temperament, so then, of course, with data protection, so of course, then we need to do something. So we need to have a threshold. That's why we set this threshold. But this data bank, so we can be quite efficient, and therefore, so we really want to be sure that we come to a good results, and of course, that we are always then pertinent to our situation. And now let's see this next slide. So we see then the 20,000 employees. So then we see here the development, the cases. So we see a real development. So this was January 2019 when we started with the registration. We see then based on months, then we have also based on a quarter base, and have also then a semester and a half year basis. And we see then over proportional then number. It's actually not that we have just a couple of cases altogether, but of course that we have the real trend, that this is a real declaration, this is something proved between 2019 and 2022. We have seen a real trend, so you see all the results that have been assessed. And now, so see the case numbers and classification. We have almost 200 cases that were registered, and so we see the cases of phase 2, phase we see then altogether 17 and 3, and then the cases of 173, excuse me, and then for cases for phase 3 we have 25 cases. So then actually lesser than we thought. So anyway, so at 25 cases, that is phase 3. What does it mean? So 25 cases of phase 3 involving the use of weapons and or tools with significant lethal danger to municipal employees. So 25 cases is a high number according to me. I see. You see all the different cases here. Then we see, for example, knife attacks, one of which resulted to death, attack with the screwdriver, use of a chain, as well as a heavy padlock in the attack, ball thrown from meeting table into face. So you see what kind of injuries that this may cause. So I do not actually know scissors. I do not have any knife next to me. But imagine that it was a case that happened, and some other assaults with a car and a member of the security staff. So there was a person that had to be arrested, and then just like in a movie, just so that this person then was able then to set himself free. This is incredible what happens then to these people. Or maybe a dangerous person doused himself with petrol, ran towards the supervisor and lit a lighter. Something that does not come to an injury, but something that could happen. So that this was incredible. Something, if you see that is terrible, and that could be happen, but of course then consequences that then can last for weeks, or maybe then an assault with a drink can in the face or in the head area. But so imagine if you feel that this causes a very strong injury. So there's a very bad cases, 25 of that, so over 3 years. It's a very high number, too high according to me. So about now, for example, the assessment of the person in charge for the data protection. So there is no legal basis specifically legitimizing the situation, regulating the data protection framework. So basically, so we do not have it then base. So we have no legal base for that. So as we said, then as I mentioned before, this is not possible. There's no legal base for that. So in order to protect our employees, we do have this data bank, but you have to know, of course, there's no particular law, there's no particular institution that is protecting such people officially. So that's the real reason why the city of Cologne started a particular initiative together with the ZeMAG, therefore based on the duty of care, prevention of danger to life and limb. And so I think that this is we're working. So the city is working on a particular law, and I believe that all those have participated are going absolutely to help us in order to register such data, and in order to understand exactly what we can do, so in order to be more efficient together with some other municipalities. Now, another very important measure. So we see that this data bank is important. The goals is protection. Of course, we have seen all these cases, and we needed to do something. So we have a central reporting and informant system. As I mentioned, we have also a training office, security management for managers, self-protection seminars. So we see that. That sometimes this calculation so it's not working fine. So it's the reason why we need, of course, to have this kind of seminars, workshops that can help protection of people. And I believe it's very good to have this kind of seminars. And then, of course, standard development. So the guardian on buildings, recommendations for action, all offers of violence prevention. And this is also very important. And then the coordination of advisory services to departments, and also the quality circle, the testing and continuous improvement of others. And then it can be also then improved on a constant basis. We have also then an alarm plan of the city of Cologne, and it can be also different kinds of communication. It can be over telephone, and all that. Of course, this is something that shows our measures. We not only have a reporting system, but we have a lot of different systems that are going to protect people. And now, finally, at the end of my presentation, I just wanted to show you a very important project. So it's called Sicher im Dienst, Safe on Duty. It's a campaign of the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. I've got the web link. You can copy that. So this is a campaign as part of the state initiative, More Protection and Security for Public Service Workers. And so we say that the core elements are comprehensive prevention guide, something that has worked extraordinarily well. So we can see what we can do. So, for example, when you're on a field service. And so then secondly, we have a statewide prevention network, January 2022, which means a network with 450 participants from 200 authorities, organizations, and institutions. So this is absolutely a very good tool. And I wouldn't show it to you if I didn't know that, of course, this has been particularly good, and that this has, of course, helped a lot of people, and we have a lot of experts that are exchanging information that, of course, are given and are doing a wonderful work. And now we have a summary now of what we can see here in this initiative, the Safe on Duty, a clear commitment against violence and workplace inspections, risk assessments. This is also another very important point: safe workplace design, qualification, communication, networking with external partners, appropriate emergency and intervention measures. So as it should be, to understand how the situation is developing, and then recording and documenting incidents of violence. For example, as we saw in the ZeMAG, and of course the follow-up measures. So basically, so we can see the whole process, so starting from prevention to the real situation, so we can work preventive, but of course so there are measures that are taking place in the whole process. So this was my presentation. So and then we do not have any time maybe to talk right now about the different things that I have shown you, but there's a discussion, and then straight after this program, then at 12 o'clock. So I would like to invite you to that, and so in the presentation, that this presentation, you can see also how you can reach us. So the city of Cologne, the Center for Crime Prevention and Security. So everything can also can be also then seen there. And of course, if you have any questions, so if you have a personal interest, of course, I'll be available. I'm very glad that you have followed my presentation, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Thank you. Goodbye.